Hey, everybody, welcome to the Cabinet Maker Profit System podcast. Look, if you've ever found yourself with your guts turning because you had to give feedback to somebody and you didn't want to do it, and you just kept humming and hawing, and one day turned into 2 days, turned into a week, turned into now you just live with it. I hope we have a solution here for you. Now, under the banner of our regular recurring feature of having a mental health episode, we have a mental health expert here who also has health and safety training. Marissa Afton is joining us today. Now, she's the author of a book. She's one of the authors of a book called Compassionate Leadership. And today on the show, she and I are going to be talking about how to do hard things in a human way. So let's get to the episode. Hi, Marissa.
Hi, Dom.
How are you?
Doing great today. How about you?
I'm good. You always have that big smile on your face. So I'm sure today is a great day. Tomorrow's going to be a great day.
I hope so.
Yeah. It probably has a lot to do with attitude, right? The way we approach every day.
Mindset is definitely key. And it being the time of year is also not bad. I love this time of year.
Oh, yeah. It's one of the
So,
best. Yeah, one of
yeah.
the best. Well, kind of a hint as to what our topic's going to be today, because you and I are talking about how to do hard things in a human way. And contractors, doesn't
Yeah,
matter if they're in cabinetry, architecture, millwork, or the GC that's building the tower, we have to
yeah,
do some hard things. And so you're going to talk to us
absolutely.
about how to do that in a human way.
Yeah, and especially as it relates to the people element, right? And I'm sure your audience are super, super skilled in all the technical aspects and have huge expertise. But sometimes that human piece is not something that we necessarily come out of, our early learning with. So this will be kind of that how to do the hard things in your interactions with your people.
Good. Well, let me ask this. Marissa
Yeah.
Afton, who the heck are you? And how is it you come to be speaking to all these forward facing business owners all around the world?
Well, yeah, that's an excellent question that I like to ask myself that too sometimes. But formally my role is I'm a partner at a global leadership development and research firm called Potential Project. We have partnered with forward-thinking companies and also with partners in academia and research like Harvard Business Review and Forbes and others.
Okay.
And our main objective is to see what kind of leadership attributes and what kind of leadership qualities are needed to build successful businesses while maintaining strong people relations and people cultures. So
Wow.
a lot of our research has informed our books. We have a book that came out earlier this year on specifically our topic,
Right.
compassionate
Yeah.
leadership, how to do hard things in a human way. And then prior to that, I have a background in the psychology of workplace HSE. So I spent a lot of time with your friends in construction, friends in manufacturing, friends in oil and gas, wherever
Mm.
you could risk life or limb. That's where I went to help people shift their mindsets, as we just talked about, to stay health, safety, and well. Health,
Wow.
safe, and well.
That's it. That's how you got on the show from that background.
Yeah, well, I mean, I hope that qualifies.
Oh, it absolutely qualifies. And you're so right. Everybody listening is a technician. We're really good at doing whatever it is we do. People that are running a cabinet shop started probably as a cabinet maker. There's a few people that have bought into the industry, but even they are technicians and they were really good at marketing before, or maybe good at accounting. So we all have a technical background that brings us to wherever we are today. But not very often do we see HR managers going into business. And
Yeah,
even if we do, you suddenly are saddled with so many pressures that are different.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those pressures can actually, if they're not something that we go into with good motivation and intention, they can actually shut us down. And so part of what I hope maybe I can help with some of your listeners is how to unlock that and come with a sense of curiosity about, it can be overwhelming. Let's face
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Just human interaction can be overwhelming sometimes, but hopefully we can give them some tips.
Yeah, sure. Well, actually, you brought up something there I want to touch on before we get into that. What would be a sign that I'm shutting down? A sign that I'm not
Mm.
doing things the right way? What's some feedback or some observations that I'd be seeing?
That's something that can be quite individual. And so one of the things that I like to say is, if you don't know what your signs are for shutting down, ask some of your closest like family members or friends, because for sure they will let you know, like you stop talking, or you retreat, or you get that like weird vein on your forehead that starts to vibrate. But
You're not looking
also,
at mine, are you?
no, I'm not. but also, it's, where do you feel resistance coming up for you? Where do you maybe procrastinate? Where do
Right.
you decide, like, oh, I know I should do X, or I need to do Y, but I'm going to put it off?
Mm.
That tends to be a sign of, it's just mental overload and
Yeah.
shutdown.
I think for me, I notice it when I have a to-do list day to day, which I do every day.
Yeah.
And the same thing keeps showing up. I'm like, I really need to get to that thing. Why am I not getting to that thing? And then eventually for me, I just get frustrated with myself. And I'm like, that's the first thing I'm going to do tomorrow. But sometimes it can take a while, especially when we have competing priorities,
Yeah.
to get to it. And then
Yeah.
things just build up more.
And let's face it, in today's world, competing priorities are becoming even more, our worlds are more and more complex each and every day. And so for some of your listeners, I'm sure they've been in their field, in their industry for 10, 20, 30 more years in many cases. And when we think about the level of complexity now,
Yeah.
the number of different things that we have to do just to get the minimum output, no wonder it's overwhelming.
No wonder. Well, speaking of that overwhelm, as I was preparing for today's meeting, I wrote a little diagram for myself, thinking about, okay, how to do hard things in a human way is our topic. You've written a book called Compassionate Leadership. And so I thought, is my audience seen as a leader in the community? So I wrote this down. As an owner, I sort of did it as a hub and spoke diagram. So if you can picture that, we've got the owner in the middle, then we've got leading a team. We've got the first employee in their company who still has a bad attitude, but it's a great technician. You've got family who might work for you. You've got business partners who might be on a different page. And I'm sure there's other definitions there. And then I used another color pen to say, well, what about suppliers, customers,
Yep.
self-talk?
Exactly.
And then the fact that I'm a mom, a dad, a daughter, a husband, what are just the family side. But other than that, there's nothing.
Yeah, other than that, there's nothing. I mean, you just articulated really well how many people we are under influence of and can influence ourselves. And it's a really nice way. And in fact, this is something that we talk about in the book, that having the ability to do hard things in a human way starts with myself. Like, how am I aware of my own leadership strengths, individual strengths, whether you're a formal or informal leader, and weaknesses? And when I have that clarity of awareness on what some of my strengths and weaknesses are, it gives me better insights into other people. And so all the people in your spoke, then I start to see them as humans just like me.
Right.
Not just a cog in the wheel. And then I can understand what their strengths and weaknesses are to a degree to be able to influence them more effectively, rather than, say, try to manipulate them or try to avoid them, which is when we're in default, we can fall into.
So this is great. I want to take it down to, you mentioned the oil patch, and the oil patch is so dynamic. For those, for people who haven't listened or worked in the oil patch before, there's rough people, there's big money, there's moving equipment, super cool moving equipment. There's swamps and deserts. It's so dynamic. Everything's different, but the people is oh my goodness. So can you think about a time that you had to bring this kind of message about safety and compassionate leadership to a difficult situation in something like the oil patch or in heavy construction?
Yeah, what's interesting is that my experience in the oil patch or in heavy construction is that there are unique cultures and cultures. And they, generally speaking, because it's so dynamic, because there's so much going on, because you've got this crazy heavy equipment that we know could kill you really easily, that actually it may not look like, how do I want to say this? Compassion happens without it looking soft and squishy. So what I mean by that is if I'm my brother's keeper, and that mindset of looking out for each other as if you are my family, because you are in those scenarios, especially folks who are out there and they're working in the oil fields for months and months and months at a time. And they're not actually necessarily, if they're, flying in from wherever else in the world that they are, they're not, those people are their family. So compassion doesn't have to be squishy and soft and I love you, man, although that's good, but it can also just be, well,
I mean,
you know what I'm
within
saying.
reason. But I do know what you mean. So compassion can be, I talked about rough people. Not everybody in the oil patch is rough, but when you're in the jack house, you could see some rough people doing rough work. But it can also, I suppose, be, hey, Fred, you're going to kill yourself.
Exactly.
And you got to jump in and cut that.
Exactly. And so the key there is to be able to do that in whatever way is natural for you, in a kind way, not, hey, Jack, cut that out. Aren't you stupid? Kind of thing, right? Not that. And an easy formula for understanding what I mean around compassionate leadership is compassion. This is just a basic definition. Compassion is empathy plus action. And the empathy piece is putting myself in your shoes. So if I'm putting myself in your shoes and I start to recognize maybe the danger or the risk that you're in, well, obviously I don't want you to have that. But empathy by itself, just feeling in a way what you're feeling, but not doing any action, it's limiting.
So if I understand you correctly, and let's go to the cabinet makers, because that's who's listening to the show. If I'm going to show somebody how to clean the blades, I might start, I want to be corrected if I'm wrong, but I would have to be reminded by a professional like you to say, I remember the first time I took the cowling off and I looked at the blades and it's a mess. But I had to remind myself there's blades in there, so you don't stick your fingers in. I mean, that's a very simple explanation. Some guys are laughing at me right now, but at the same time, how many people do we know that have done that? It's because it's full of sawdust and you go to just, in your mind, you're like, clean it away. And
it's a habit. It's a habitual autopilot kind of reflex, but that's what we can override.
Right. By saying, I remember when I first opened the cowling, this is what I saw. I'd have to remember that. I think, sorry to cut you off. My problem would be, how do I remember to do that when I'm trying to manage somebody or when I'm going through just being the leader I need to be in my company?
Right. So I do have a bit of a formula for it. And the formula isn't necessarily something that's going to easily switch on every single time. But if you do these 4 steps, they will help you get there. Right? Are you going to write them down?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Now, again, it may seem kind of, theoretical and broad, but actually you can go through it pretty quickly. So the first step is simply being present. And what do I mean by this? We talked earlier about your to-do list and how things just end up on your to-do list because there's so many different things that are happening all the time. We're being pulled in multiple directions. We have competing priorities, especially if you're on a site, there's so many distractions.
Right.
And it's really tough for us to be present. So you're not even going to be able to see the person who you're leading in that moment before they stick their hands in the blade.
Right.
If you're not present. So step number 1 is simply recognizing when you are not where your feet are.
Okay.
If your mind is someplace else. And for anybody in any kind of heavy industry, it seems like that's kind of fundamentals. But in fact, how many of us are actually, I've been on sites where, you have all the sirens and all the machinery and it's all there to alert you to not walk in front of a piece of heavy equipment. And yet people do it because it's white noise to them.
Yeah, they've tuned it out. They're not present.
Tuned it out because they're not present.
Yeah.
So step number 1 is just starting to retrain yourself for better presence, which gives you better attention, which gives you better focus.
Okay.
Now, step number 2, and it also goes into that awareness piece that we talked about earlier, right? If we are more leading myself and aware of my strengths and my potential pitfalls, I have better awareness of myself. I put myself in somebody else's shoes.
Yeah.
Because I have awareness of them, their strengths and their potential weaknesses.
So much to remember. Okay. So first, be present.
Present. Number 1. When I do that, I have the ability to step into whatever dialogue I'm about to step into with greater courage. I'm not worried about hurting somebody else's feelings, about hurting myself because I'm hurting somebody else's feelings. So I just step in with courage. It's like, feel the fear and do it anyway. Like, you're going to tell somebody to do something differently, and they may react and be like, don't tell me what to do. I know how to do it. And yet courage will help get us
and
past
yet we
that.
need to do it.
And we need to do it.
We need to do it. Yeah. Okay.
Step number 3, you ready?
Oh, sorry. I got step number 1 is be present. What's step number 2?
Courage.
Oh, the courage. I'm sorry. I was so present, I forgot to write down courage.
No worries.
Okay. Step number 3.
Candor. Be candid. Say what needs to be said. Don't beat around the bush. And I know in most situations that's easy for people. And yet we tend to soften things. And even the way that you described it a little earlier, and I know you were just giving an example, but saying, hey, I put myself in or I've been in your situation, and I remember when I was first in your, journeyman, whatever, that could be like, just be direct. Direct is faster.
Right.
Direct is faster.
We're going to look inside here. There's a bunch of blades. Don't touch anything.
Exactly. But saying it in a kind way, right? Again, it's not blaming the other person. I was
smiling when I said it.
Okay. No, it counts. It counts. And directness is, I think, the fastest way to help somebody see what they're not seeing.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the 4th one, and the 4th one is transparency.
Interesting. Okay. So, I mean, that lends itself to the question, what does that mean, transparency? Because I'm surprised that's number 4.
Well, the thing is that maybe not in the example that you gave, but a lot of leaders in our experience feel like they're supposed to have all the answers. And again, in our crazy, dynamic, ever-changing world, we don't necessarily, it would be impossible for us to have all the answers.
Right.
And because we want to seem like good leaders, we tend to make things up. And people know, they get a vibe internally if they feel like that doesn't feel right. And the other part of transparency is allowing a little bit of vulnerability. So even if you're coming in as a strong leader, you're also seen as a human in it. So admitting when you yourself may have done something wrong, or if you don't have all the answers. So that's where the transparency piece comes in. Is that making sense, Tom?
It does. It does. And, I look at this now from a coaching perspective. One of the things I had to learn a long time ago as a coach, I don't have all the answers. I'm never going to have all the answers. I will never be a better architectural mill worker than the most junior architectural mill worker you ever meet. I can't.
Right.
That's their skill set. Mine is the business of running, the business.
Business of business.
And it would be a bald-faced lie to say that I was better technically than anybody else. So why bother?
Why bother? Exactly. Yeah. And yet, when we don't have that sense of humility that you're demonstrating right now, and we can get in this again, it all goes back to the awareness of myself and where my natural limitations are, and being okay with that, because you can't be an expert in everything. But some people feel that they should.
Where in this, I love the fact that you've got it boiled down to 4 steps. So it's be present, courage, candid, transparency.
And then it becomes a virtuous cycle, which will help you start right back at the top again with presence.
And so where in this is give that feedback now? Because if I can overshare, one of the problems I have is I tend to let these things go on too long. Somebody doing something that I think is wrong. It's just not our process, or it's not doing what I think I want it to be. And I've waited too long. And now I've never stepped in before. Why am I stepping in now? Why is today the day? Where does that fit into this?
I mean, it's an excellent example. And what I would say in what you just shared is you bypass the courage piece.
Oh, that hurt.
I'm sorry.
But then you had the courage piece there. Yeah. Right. Okay.
So it's when we become more present, not just with what's happening around us moment by moment, but we become present with our own, like, why am I letting this guy get away with this? Why have I not what's holding me back from giving the feedback that I know needs to be given? And because I'm not helping that person, anybody.
Yeah. Wow. I I'm
to
so
stun you
happy.
to silence.
I'm internalizing the fact that I skipped the courage step. Now I can
And
only
not to
imagine.
say that you're not courageous, but in things, this is the balance.
Right.
You were faced with a hard thing. And because you're a human and you have humility and you probably didn't want to like jump in on somebody or hurt their feelings. I mean, these are all, some people don't have this, but a lot of people have those subconscious kind of concerns. Or maybe you're hoping he'd figure it out, or it would just, and then we just let these things go. Whereas the courage, candid, transparent thing to do is to, and the gift for the other person is to go right into, hey, this isn't working. This. We got to fix this. Yeah.
Can I paint a picture that exists in far too many businesses? And by the way, every business thinks they're unique and nobody else has this situation.
Yeah.
But can I do that? So there's a company out there. There's an owner listening right now that has a family member working in their company. And that family member just isn't on the same planetary gear. They're not jiving, they're not grooving, and there's a problem. And that problem is causing, a ripple effect in the company. I need to have the conversation with this person, but that's wrapped up in, he's my brother, she's my niece, my sister's going to hear about it, it's going to come back, like all of the family stuff. And I deal with this every day because I do a lot of family business coaching. Does this format work? And do you have any examples that you can walk us through? Names rubbed out, of course.
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest, I don't know whether I have an example that's specific to families that I've worked through. However, to answer your question, does it work? Yes. Does it mean it's easy? No. Does it mean that there aren't going to be some residual repercussions? I mean, you can't control how people are going to react, and you can't control how people may feel hurt in these scenarios. But I can pretty much guarantee, and again, this goes back, not to be too like research geeky, but our research on this, on the hard and the human, like the hard thing is the hard thing, and we can just like bulldoze our way through the hard thing, but we'll lose people's trust.
Their hearts, right? Yeah.
We'll lose their hearts, exactly right. Or we can just do the human part, which is making sure everybody always feels good, and we all
nothing gets done. Yeah.
Nothing gets done.
That would be the Aloha Deck method of management.
There you go. There you go. So
it's just a party all the time.
It's just a party all the time, right? Yeah. And so it's putting these two pieces together, the research, and this is 2 million data points. We've done so many different assessments and talked to different leaders across the world. It's clear there's a multiplier effect when you bring these two pieces together, which we call both and leadership, right? It's not polarities, both hard and human together. Better engagement, better motivation, better intention to stay, all of the rest, better leader support. So back to your question about the families, can I guarantee that this family member, because there's like also emotional tie-ins with that they're just gonna be like, oh, wow, how human of you. I feel great. Let's, probably not. But I can guarantee that it will feel better than ignoring the problem and hoping it's going to go away, or bulldozing through the problem and making that person feel like they're less than.
Yeah. It's not going to go away. I think we can both agree. The problems don't go away. They actually, I'm going to quote Rick Patak. Rick is a frequent guest here. He works with me. He does a lot of the foreman training and lean manufacturing. He talks about dragon's eggs. And he says he's walking through the forest and you run across this very tired knight. And he's just exhausted. And so you talk to him, you say, well, what's going on, buddy? Just really tired. Why? Well, I keep killing these dragons. I'm fighting dragons all day long and it's exhausting. And you say, well, I saw a whole nest of dragon's eggs back there. We can go back there and stop the problem before it appears, right? What if we got the eggs? And so this is a Rick Patak story, and I'm sure he got it from somewhere else, but that's kind of what we're talking about here. Let's go and deal with these things when they come up so that they don't get bigger later, because they will get bigger later.
And in fact, that is compassionate. And so what's not compassionate is ignoring it, delaying it, deferring it, because when everybody knows where they stand, candor, transparency, then everybody can move on and make a decision about what's needed to move forward or part company, because that sometimes is also.
I'm so glad you said this, or I'm so glad you said that. Part company. There's a bunch of people out there who just went, oh, do you think if I did this, we could part company? Because sometimes it doesn't work.
Exactly.
There are times it doesn't work, and it's just not going to work for a million reasons. And I'm not just talking about family businesses, but any business. This happens a lot when you start a company. You start a shop and you hired somebody and they're a really good technician. They were your first hire ever. Here you are 12 years later, that person's been with you forever. But it's this dark cloud corner of the shop where anything that goes in there, it comes out withered and broken and dry and horrible because that person's attitude is just horrendous.
Yeah.
We've got to deal with it.
And so what I would say to that is, yes, of course, getting ahead of it. The times when I've experienced this in my leadership, my individual leadership, does it hurt to start? Yeah, nobody wants to be let go. Usually people have a sense that if they did more, if they were more, they could shift the dynamic. And by the time we get to the let go conversation, all those have been tried.
Right.
But what usually happens is, whether it's 3 weeks or 3 months, that person has found a situation that's better fit for them. And then they come back and they say, you were right. This has been my experience. You were right. You saw it. I didn't want to hear it. But now I recognize, because of where I am now, it wasn't a good fit for me where we were.
It's funny that we're talking about this today. I mean, we had it scheduled, but the reason it's funny is because just prior to you, I had a coaching meeting with somebody who runs a roofing and solar company. For those of you listening who think I just work with cabinet makers and architectural mill workers, I feel like I'm cheating on you, but it's true. I work with all other construction companies. But he had a guy who was his lead installer who'd, come up through the ranks, but had a bad attitude. And so after one of our coaching meetings, we dealt with this in my way, not using your 4-step model here. And so he had that conversation with the guy. And I said, so did he leave? And he's like, no, he actually wanted the firm hand. He wanted the firm hand, but he hadn't been getting it because this owner is a nice guy. He's very outgoing. He's there to build the company. He wants to build a great culture, but having a firm hand isn't his natural default. But when he gave this guy that firm management, like you have to put your roofing anchors in. You can't take shortcuts. This is the process for going through the footings on a solar panel. There's technical things, and he was taking those shortcuts, but he gave him the firm hand. And the guy was just like, okay, I'll change.
Exactly. It's again, courage, candor, transparency. I mean, what was not happening before, it sounds like, may have been either any one of those things fell down.
Yeah. Like probably courage or candid.
Probably courage or candid. And people appreciate it. It may not feel good in the moment when somebody's like, ooh, like feedback can be tough. But at least then I feel empowered to make a decision about whether or not I'm going to go with the feedback or I'm going to not.
You just reminded me, and looking back on this coaching meeting I had today, if I remember back, the reason that he didn't want to give the feedback is right now it's hard to find good people. And so I've heard this from many owners. I don't want to push too hard because I don't want to lose the guy, typically men, right? So I don't want to push too hard because I don't want to lose the guy. And that's a fear. And then when we operate out of fear as a business owner, that's not a good place. Where we're afraid of our team, not good. And yet we find ourselves in that situation because it takes 3 weeks to get a resume through the door. Never mind if it's a good one.
Exactly right. Right. Courage again is what I keep coming back to. And then just to kind of make it a little bit less esoteric, if you will, because people might be going, okay, well, first, how am I going to even remember these 4 elements? And what I want to say is it can happen really fast. It all happens. You can do presence, courage, candor, and transparency in one sentence, right? You don't have to do some big mental preparation and all of that. So it becomes a way of naturally engaging with your teams and your family, and it works in informal leadership, just
Yeah.
as, works on my husband's, that kind of thing. Right. So that's what I want to say. It may feel very formulaic, but once you start to click into these four elements, it can begin to happen quite naturally.
Well, I hope people do. Now, you've got a book on this. We've talked about it before. Do you have a copy of the book in the office?
I do. It's right here.
Compassionate Leadership, How to Do Hard Things in a Human Way.
That's right.
Fantastic. I love it. And thanks for, that's actually how we found you, is because of this book. And then we did our research and we thought, we've got to get you on this show.
Well, I'm very pleased to be able to talk with you, Dom, and your audience.
Yeah. So what made you guys decide that this book needed to be done?
It's a great question. I think before we started this project, we had some theories about what, again, as I said, what are some of the leadership attributes that are most needed to drive the businesses of the future?
Okay.
And one of the things that we had a theory about was that being able to balance driving execution with balancing maintaining strong people cultures would be the next level for leadership development in any industry,
right,
around the world.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if we're talking about software or a restaurant or cabinet shop. Yeah,
exactly. But we didn't go in knowing. So we started this actually right at the beginning of the pandemic, and the pandemic, fortunately, created great fodder for us to test this out. And of course, in the pandemic, companies, leaders globally were scrambling to maintain people and keep them engaged and keep them motivated and support them. And they were searching for tools to be able to do that effectively. Right. And so our research really bore out that companies can't just, again, as I said, forget the business component. You still have to drive results. Yeah. But if you basically, you can't over-index on any one of these things. And too many leaders have had this false sense that this is a dichotomy, that you have to do one or the other. So that's how we went in to some theories about what was needed for successful leadership of the future. And then the data supported that. Excellent.
If somebody wants to find you in this wide world,
yes,
how do we do that?
Well, I would first direct you to our website, which is www.potentialproject, which is the name of our company.com. And on that website, you will find more information about our book. We host a number of live events. Just yesterday, I was doing a live panel cast, if you will. I was on a panel with some other experts in the field. And we have white papers and other things besides. And you can also follow us on our social. We're on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me personally, and all of the major social outlets.
Yeah. As I often say, if you can't find me, you're not looking.
That's right.
If you can't find Marissa, you're not looking. Yeah, because the book is doing very well. I mean, you guys are getting quite a bit of attention for it.
That's true.
You mentioned, the pandemic and how that changed things. But the one thing it did is, man, Zoom has just gone through the roof. It's so much easier to meet and to get great guests in to speak. And by the way, let me do this plug for you, Marissa. Anybody who's listening, who's on their leadership board for one of the millwork associations, reach out. You can contact experts like Marissa, and look how wonderful she is and the information she gives, and bring that information to the leaders in your community so that we can all, a rising tide raises all ships. Don't be shy and think you've got to get the same local speaker again from the bank down the street. Get some great authors here to talk about what's changing in the market and how to take advantage of it.
Yeah. And Dom, I appreciate that call out. And the other thing I want to say, our topic today was how to do hard things in a human way based on the compassionate leadership research. But of course, with my extra background in HSE. I mean, I do often talk on the topics of situational awareness, specifically around safety. Happy to talk all in many different places. You asked me for an example from oil fields. but I can actually say, I was recently speaking to a manufacturing plant on situational awareness and psychological safety combined,
Wow.
because they were just shifting locations, and they had a brand new plant, brand new facility. And of course, there was all this clash of people who've been there for years and want to do things the way they'd always done it. And then you have new equipment, new everything. So, there's a lot of scope for how we can shift our mindsets to have better compassion, better leadership, better situational awareness, better psychological safety.
There are two people that I know listen to the show that right now are moving locations. And so interesting that you say that, because we do get stuck in our ways, and it could be something as simple as George and Jeff have had benches next to each other for 12 years.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
And now you split us up, and it's causing chaos, right? We used to share all the pipe clamps, and now everybody's got them, and they don't take care. Yeah.
Or this used to be my bench, and now I have to share it with another team who are coming in, or between shifts, or whatever it is. And I used to be able to leave things just as I wanted, and all of that. And so, it's just about mindset.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting that, there's so many ways to be trained technically in whatever trade we have. It doesn't matter what the trade is. In this case, we're talking to people who do finished wood trades. And then there's even people who go and get MBAs. But until you actually get inside a business with all the nuances and all the variables running at their own speed, wow, you really have to walk a line of being a student, being a teacher, listening, asking, telling. It's a rare gift for somebody who can run a business.
And I would say it's not for everyone, and that's okay.
Yeah.
For people who think that that's what they should do because they've moved through their own ranks in, exactly as you said, whatever specialization they're in. Yeah. And I think this is the next logical step, but it doesn't have to be. You can still be an expert in exactly what you're doing and thrive there and be happy there without taking on all the other elements that when you're in it, you're like, ooh, this isn't what I thought I was signing up for.
Well, Marissa, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate your time.
It's been
great having you here. You're part of the whole mental health topic that I do. But once a year, we have somebody in to talk about mental health. And I really appreciate you being here, because it gets overlooked inside of, the manufacturing and the construction world. It can be rough and ready, and we don't talk about this stuff. But I'm glad you came in, and that you've got a health and safety background as well on top of that. Perfect. Yeah.
What I can say, Dom, is at the end of the day, bottom line, we're all human. So the fact that it doesn't matter whether you've got like a tough person, tough boy exterior, we all feel, we all have emotions. It's okay. And we want to be able to talk about these things and destigmatize them, just to help each other out.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Marissa. Good luck with the book. And for everybody listening, the book's called Compassionate Leadership. Can you hold it up one more time? So in case
it's here.
It was right there. Perfect. Thanks very much, Marissa. Have a great day.
You too, Dom. Thanks so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, a big, huge thanks to Marissa Afton and all of the crew there for being a guest on the show. The book Compassionate Leadership is probably one you want to pick up. Especially if, as I said in the beginning, if you're finding yourself in a situation where you need to make a change in a person, you need to help them, guide them, lead them, change their behavior. Maybe you've got some real friction. I'll say friction is a word that represents a massive problem. Then this is a strategy to do it. Actually, here are the 4 points that you guys heard me taking notes there. These are the 4 steps that Marissa talked about here. Number 1 is be present. Just be in the game. So think about where you are and take a moment to clear your mind and be present. Number 2, courage. She kind of caught me on that one. Great coaching moment. Number 3, be candid. And number 4, transparency. So there you go. There's a 4-step system for, how to do hard things in a human way, how to give that piece of difficult feedback, but do it in a human way so that you preserve the relationship, preserve the person, but still get your point across. I hope you enjoyed that. Listen, please don't forget, I need you to leave feedback or a review. There's many ways to do that, including on Trustpilot. You can do that as well.